Hello, everybody. My name's Julia Bradbury. These are the lockdown sessions. I'm conducting these with psychotherapist Jonathan Hoban, and we decided that during this incredibly stressful time, and let's face it, this weird time, that we would try and offer some help for anybody who is dealing with any mental health issues. And to be honest, I think just anybody, because I think we've all got to be mindful of our mental health at this time. I, of course, am not the medical expert here. I'm not the professional. Jonathan is. I hope you can see this. We are recording over Zoom. He's in one place. I'm in my garden. And this is how this is going to roll. And we're going to be putting it out over social media and various other channels for your delight and for your help, I hope. This is his book, so you know he is good. It's called Walk with Your Wolf, Unlock with Your Intuition, Confidence and Power. This is such an early copy that I've had to scratch out. They changed the title of it. Hi, Jonathan, can you hear me?
I can, yes, absolutely. How are you doing?
Good, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I think this is a timely moment for us to be doing this. As I just said, a lot of people needing and wanting help and information. I think some people will just want to watch to hear a couple of voices as well, really talking about it. So just to give a quick run through, in this session, which is going to last for about half an hour, we're going to cover stress, why we're all feeling a bit stressed, what's going on with our bodies and brains. And you're going to be giving us some very useful tools to try and handle various situations as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's kick off with the first and most obvious point, which is it is okay for us to feel stressed in these unprecedented times, isn't it? And we should allow ourselves to feel it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's completely natural. I mean, given our climate, and I think you asked me this question before, so I had a bit of time to think about it. And I sort of went over sort of either clients that I've spoken to or people I've spoken to on the street. And I hope you don't mind, but I actually listed down a few things that seem to be the most common things that people are experiencing right now. So generally, people are feeling powerless and out of control, of course. Many feel that their liberty has been taken away in many respects. Yeah, so I'm feeling very, very out of control. Feeling trapped and confined in our homes, of course, which for a lot of people is creating a great deal of frustration. I think we're noticing this more as the weeks are going on, week 5, week 6. And we're seeing it sort of as we walk down the street and just generally. And of course, it creates a very stressful family dynamic if everybody's on top of each other, sort of day in, day out. Feeling overprotective and worried about families and finances, financial climate. And I have to say, when everything hit, actually kicked in. Personally, as a dad, I felt incredibly overprotective of my kids, for sure.
Yeah.
Unable to have physical contact with friends and family is a huge one right now, especially for
what you're saying about your kids, I feel about my parents. I've got 80-year-old parents who've both battled cancer, so their immune systems are down. They're definitely high risk. And I was almost straight away, we need to get you safe. We need to get you isolated. They were here with my kids who were still going to school. And the protection thing instantly kicked in with them. And I know a lot of people are in that situation.
Absolutely. And for people that live alone as well, you can imagine how hard that must be, you know, as well.
Yeah.
Just that physical contact, having hugs, that reassurance, that safety. It's a must. We only realize how important these things are when they're taken away from us. Yeah. Sort of sitting with a strong feeling of uncertainty, fear of the unknown is huge. The fear of catching COVID, of course, is a big thing. But also, I think one of the other things that I've just sort of just sprung to my mind is also, I mean, personally, I've been feeling as the weeks have gone on, a huge amount of survivor's guilt. When I'm happy and positive and I'm doing something that makes me feel good about myself, I suddenly have to just, you know, look at myself and going, am I allowed to feel that way given our current climate? You know, especially, you know, if something's going well in my life, someone down the road may have lost their job, or we've lost someone's lost a loved one close to them. So I think with survivor's guilt, the most important thing with that is if you feel happy, allow yourself to feel happy. Don't shame or blame yourself for feeling that way.
What is actually happening? Speaking of that survivor's guilt and the feeling, the shame, the emotions, the stress levels, the anxiety, what is happening to our body and what's happening to our brains when all of these things kick in? Because it's sort of fight or flight emotions that are kicking in and hormones that are kicking in, isn't it?
It's the stress hormones, exactly as you said. So we have a cocktail of hormones. The front runners are cortisol, which is a stress hormone, norepinephrine. I can never say that. even after years, I still can't get that right.
Tongue twister.
And adrenaline as well. And that cocktail, if we had a cocktail in a bar, you'd have a pretty big hit. And when this all kicked in, and when I myself felt it sort of hit my body, and we all went into sort of fight, flight, or freeze, started to, what are we going to do next? What do we have to do? And again, with that sort of, we feel very hyper vigilant. We can feel very paranoid. And again, we feel those stress levels and anxiety levels raising. And I think a lot of people started to catastrophize as well. And also make assumptions, which is a dangerous cycle to get into, because you start, making plans, you start creating negative outcomes in your head.
And that's what catastrophizing is, making huge assumptions, building up the worst possible scenario, painting this dreadful picture in your head, and then you're sort of almost pulling yourself towards it into a black hole, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And why do we do that? Because it's something that we can control. Even if it's a negative outcome, it's an outcome. And when we're sitting with feelings of fear of the unknown and feelings of uncertainty, that's why we get into catastrophizing and making assumptions. It's a survival mechanism and a very primal reaction to have. And again, a normal feeling to have.
I know you don't mind me referring to this, but you have worked for the NHS in your past. You've suffered from burnout. You've had issues with alcohol. So you've been there. You've been frontline, and that's why you wrote your book, really. And you do an unusual kind of therapy as a psychotherapist, because obviously you do the sort of traditional sit in a room and talk about it, but mostly, and that's why we connected, you like to do walking therapy, don't you? You like to take people outdoors to talk about their issues.
Yeah, so much so now I can't do indoor therapy anymore, mainly because my clients, once they've been outside, they don't feel under the spotlight anymore. We walk side by side, and when you walk in nature, something magical happens. There is a sense of safety, there is a sense of neutrality, there is a sense of belonging, and the stress levels come down. And as we've mentioned before, in sort of when you've interviewed me before, when we're in nature, oxytocin is released into our brains,
which is the love hormone. It's called the love chemical,
precisely, which helps with the bonding, I believe, between myself and the client. And again, it sort of decreases cortisol, and which brings us to a state of being present and allows us to sit with our feelings and to sit with our emotions.
Which brings us very naturally, we were perhaps going to talk about this later, but we've got to it now. One of the most important things, a really important coping mechanism. I have a family who are over in Spain, and they haven't been allowed out at all for weeks. They haven't even been allowed out for their exercise or anything like that, which at least we have been able to do. Spending as much time outside as you can during that period is incredibly important, isn't it? I mean, this is what I do. This is why I present the programs that I present. It's why I have my website, The Outdoor Guide. I'm passionate about the outdoors and how it can heal us and help us heal for all the reasons that you've said. Never more so than now, I think. And I genuinely think people all around the world, and certainly in cities, are beginning to understand how important our parks are, how important their little woodland down the road is, the lake, the reservoir, whatever it is that's close to them. We need nature. So one bit of solid advice that you and I would always say right now is take it, use it right now, and get out there when you can. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we're a part of it as much as it's a part of us. We're from there. We're animals, I think someone said to me, "I'm not an animal." I said, "You are an animal."
It's in your DNA. It's part of us.
It is, absolutely. And I think that people's responses to kind of getting outside, getting on their bikes, however you do it, getting outside and making that connection is so important. As you mentioned, I had burnout, and when I was in the lowest point of my addiction, when I walked in nature, there was such a sense of consistency that I had from the nurturing that I felt when I was sort of surrounded by trees. If I walked in the evening, dusk, twilight, looked up, and then the night came and I saw a blanket of stars. If it was rainy one day, sunny the next, it's consistent in what it does. It's always there, and it's always been there for me. And there's this wonderful non-judgmental presence when we go out for a walk that does allow us to feel safe. And when we feel safe, the stress comes down and we're able to process our thoughts and feelings far more effectively as well.
I do always tell people as well that it's not just about big, massive open spaces and mountains. It is as simple as the park, the little garden around the corner from you, the sanctuaries that a lot of cities have. I mean, Tokyo is one of the most densely populated cities in the world, but they have all these little pockets of gardens. And obviously the Japanese believe in forest bathing. And although everybody's packed tightly together in Tokyo, it's very important for them to go out and indulge in this forest bathing, indulge in this nature. So find that little bit of green.
Do you remember sort of in sort of stories as a kid where someone just goes to the window, they open and they look at the moon? I still love doing that. My kids love doing that as well.
Yeah. So just open a window.
And so if you can't get out, well, again, if you have a disability, if it is harder for you to do that, and I'm talking about sort of getting down and upstairs, whatever it is, I think, you know, we have to learn. We all have to be creative. We all have to adapt. But however we get that contact, it's, as you said, it's ultimately vitally important, especially during this this current period of time.
I know one of the people that follows us, we've had lots of questions and queries, and we'll answer more of those as these sessions evolve over the weeks. But one mum said she's got her teenage son, I think it was, to come out with her now. But how does she then get the teenage son to engage with her when they're out on a walk? And you've got quite an interesting stance on that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been thrown back together again. I don't know what the state of the relationship she has with her son. I think ultimately, you know, teenagers, well, as a teenager, I wanted to be left alone. Teenagers want to have a sense of autonomy, don't they? They just want to go off and do their own thing. I think, you know, let them come to you when they come to you. If they walk away, let them walk away. Don't put any pressure on it at all. And I think as parents, we try and engage our kids way too much. They have to be able to sort of go out and sort of be with their own thoughts and be with their imagination. I think sometimes we overfeed, we over-engage. Yeah. I think there is something to be said for just letting go. And
it's still a shared experience for you, isn't it? Even if you weren't talking together all the time throughout that walk or the bike ride or whatever it was, you've still done it together in some way. So there's still something for you to reflect upon at a later stage.
The great thing about doing walking therapy with clients is you can walk in silence, and that silence is comfortable. If you're sitting in a therapy room opposite someone, it's not that comfortable. Even in a family home, sometimes it cannot feel comfortable sitting around a kitchen table if there's tension. So walking side by side, the silences are so much more easier to kind of sit with. So as you said, even if your child is walking beside you and they're not saying anything, they're gauging, you're bonding, and it's just, yeah, very powerful.
It's all perfectly natural. It's okay for us to feel stressed. We've said that, and to feel powerless, out of control, the anxiety that we're feeling because we are for the first time ever all globally in this situation together. What happens if you suppress those feelings? What happens if you tend to think, I'm okay, I'm tough, I'm all right, I can manage this. I'm not going to allow those feelings to even enter my sphere.
Yeah, if you repress your feelings, it's like, I use the pressure cooker analogy. Pressure cooker here, if there's no release valve, if we suppress it, if you see anger, frustration is low level anger. Stress is, you know, if you see anger as an energy, it builds up in this pressure cooker, and it's either going to do one of two things. If there's no release, it's either going to explode, or it's going to we're going to implode, which creates depression. So before it explodes, the alarm will go off, woo, 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 and that's anxiety. You know, so with the most important thing is not to suppress your feelings. What's actually really imperative is to acknowledge that you're having the feeling. Try and name the feeling. You know, it's like
Connect with it.
Well, if you were saying you felt a certain way, Julia, and I ignored you, you'd feel irritated, wouldn't you? It would be annoying.
And you're really doing that to yourself. You're irritating yourself if you don't acknowledge that feeling.
It's exactly the same that we have with external relationships. We have that with the relationship we have with ourselves. It's called an interpersonal relationship. So if you ignore it, it gets louder and louder. And anxiety is a primal response trying to tell us something. It's literally like if you had a fire in the kitchen going off and the alarm was going like that. You know, you're not going to say, oh, let's get rid of the fire alarm. You're going to say, let's get rid of the fire in the kitchen. You know, let's do that. So by naming the feeling, acknowledging the feeling, there is a sense of relief and release. With teenagers as well, if you're a parent, what's the most powerful strategy is not to try and fix, It's to say, I can see that you feel angry. I can see that you feel sad. And when we feel seen and heard, there is that sense of relief, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good tip. I have found that a routine has been invaluable, not just for me personally, but also for my kids. I've got 3 young kids who are here at home. They've got a really firm school routine Monday to Friday, which we've kept. They even put their school uniform on. We emulate the walk to school, around the block or in the garden, and they do lessons in the morning, and it works amazingly for them. I'm able to do that, and I know that there are parents who are struggling. So let's touch on how important the routine is, why it is important. Even if you're on your own, you still need to be able to allocate time for your feelings and for things, don't you? Because that will help your day run more smoothly. And you shouldn't feel guilty building into that routine the me time, the time where maybe it's just a time for reflection, or it's reading, or it's doing something fun, or it's your exercise, or it's above and beyond that. Don't feel guilty. It goes back to what you were saying earlier on, that sort of shame of having that moment. We shouldn't have that, and we should build it in.
Boundaries are essential. A structure is essential. I mean, again, as animals, if we have it, if with kids, if we know, and with adults, there's no difference. We need to know what's happening in the day. When we have those boundaries, we feel safe. We know what's coming up. We can prepare for that. If we don't, it's like, when am I going to get my me time? If you're in a family home, it's like, you need that rota. Who's going to take over the kids? Who's going to, how's this going to work? Especially when you're sort of all piled in together during the lockdown period. I need, if someone wants their personal space, you'll have to kind of arrange, well, you go out as I stay in,
Yeah.
We can have I could just go to a room just to calm down and chill out. And we do need that to kind of have and maintain a personal space during this time. But it is vitally important to have that structure, for sure. Because as I said, again, it makes us feel safe. When we feel safe, the stress levels come down.
How do we manage our natural feelings of anger and frustration at this time of close proximity? I defy anyone to say, I'm not feeling any of that, and I'm absolutely okay with everything that's going on, and not have some anger bubbling away at this whole situation, because we're all angry. Because it's not fair, and it's unprecedented, and it's taking away, as you said, our liberty and our jobs and our security, and so much is at stake here. So how do I manage, if I'm living with you, how do I not take it all out on you or the kids, or even on myself if I am living alone?
I'm going to tell you how to do that. It's a couple of really simple tips. The first thing is naming the feeling. I know that's simple. And what you said prior to me answering this question is, this is why we need to have a structure, so we can have that me time. When you walk out in nature, you can sit with your feelings. You can process your thoughts and feelings. So you can think. What tends to happen in arguments is we're reactive. When our stress levels are high, cortisol is high, we're reactive. We don't kind of step back. So first tip is, you need to step back. Yeah. If you're sensitive like myself, take your ego out of it. It's not all about you. We have to do that during this period of time. But I want, no, put it down. I need to get just that a period of time, I'd say about an hour, before kind of you can respond. No one's saying you can't respond, but give yourself that time. If you can go out, even if you've got a garden, go out there. Going into another room, I think, get out of the house, really go. When you've named the feeling, if you're struggling with that, that's why I tell people to kind of, I know it's old school, but writing down, keeping a feelings diary, or writing down how you feel. Because the minute you start writing, you ask yourself the question, how do I feel? Yeah. A lot of the time we launch into something, and, our partner will say, what are you angry at? And they go, I don't know, and by that time, it's just noise, and no one's listening to each other, and no one's taking each other into consideration. So I think that old school way, even in the NHS, if someone was very angry, we'd get them into another room, we'd create that distance, get that space. That's the first thing. Really listening, active listening. If I'm sitting there just giving you the body language of like, I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
And someone's going to come up to you Number one, sense the tone, sense the body language. It's like a cat who's got its hair up like that. And you got the toy going, hey, kitty, 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 like with a toy. It's just going to go, you're really annoying me. So it's exactly the same thing. Our body, is giving off signals. You need to listen to that. If your pride's going, but I want to sort it out, put your ego down. Again, step back. It's really, really, really important to do that. When you speak, be aware of your body language. I'm very passionate, so you can see I'm like this.
Lots of hand movements. I'm the same.
I am. It's Irish. It's my Irish mother. When she let free in Tesco, let's not go there anyway. But we really sort of wear our heart on our sleeve. Slow it down, softer tonality, really engage, eye contact. We all need to feel safe or heard. Don't minimize what the other person's saying. Why are you worrying about that? It's really important. If someone's saying or feeling something, if it's important to them, it's important. So for now,
even if it seems a small thing to you, let them have that feeling.
Let them have it. The thing that creates the most, it's the ants that get us, not the elephants. It's those little niggly things. Why'd you put the teaspoon there? I told you to put it there. You're like, those things build up and then you get this explosion. So you have to let the little things go. Last point on this. When this all happened, we went into conserving food, didn't we?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The panic buying.
We need to conserve energy in exactly the same way. If we're tired, we can't manage our emotions. It's like a child who's tired, they throw an absolute fit. It's the same with us. We can't think strategically. We can't even manage these kind of more, let's say, tense situations in any relationship we have. So let the little things go, let those little things, and conserve energy. If you have more energy, you're more able to manage your emotional well-being and the emotions as they arise.
So don't panic buy with your food, and don't panic buy your emotions either. That would be your slogan for the day.
Copyright.
I'm very concerned about people who are on their own. We've talked about the routine and how important that is. There's something called the Pomodoro Technique, which is time on and off the screen if you are working from home alone. That helps, doesn't it? Will you explain that a little bit more, what it is?
It's a great way that it's Pomodoro Technique was devised. This guy somehow had the Pomodoro tomato technique. It was a timer, and he recognized that the brain can't really effectively work for more than 30 minutes. We start getting overwhelmed. And if we're right now, there's a lot of free floating anxiety anyway. Even if you don't see it every day, it's there. So we're more easily overstimulated either through tech, which is kind of visual overstimulation, retinal overstimulation, or if we're in a house full of children, there's a lot of noise, we get auditory overstimulation as well. So I think it's good to you do 40 minutes and then put it down for 20 minutes. Let everything reset. Yeah. And people that do that in the city, when I worked in the city for many years, those who took lunch breaks, those who had those 20 minutes off, that's not a waste of time. That's an investment. It's an investment to be able to kind of just be so much more productive. Yeah. With your work and in your relationships and sort of generally with.
And what about connecting with people? And I don't really like this expression, but it does explain it very clearly. Reaching out if you're alone for some comfort or some company over something like this, FaceTiming, technology, Skyping, whatever it might be. Again, back to those feelings of not feeling ashamed to ask for that help, or saying, look, I'm alone, I'd love a chat, or, send me something funny.
You made a really good point when we started this. It's actually just seeing a face. You're not, even if you're not talking about anything, again, we need to have that connection. I mean, the connection with nature. I mean, when I was on my own, I lived on my own for 5 years. And when I went for a walk, I named the trees, I humanized the trees, I humanized the sky. And even to this day, I go for a walk and they feel like my family. But again, we need that network of support. It's not so long ago we came from tribes, and I think we might be a very chatty person. When I was younger, I was paralytically insecure, but I still like to sit or be in the presence of, other people chatting or be in the middle of conversation. But if you are struggling, it's so important not to keep it in. It's so important not to keep it to yourself. And I've done this myself, and I know it feels the opposite of what you want to do at the time. But it really, if you dig deep, have the courage, and the more that you do it, the more you push yourself out of your comfort zone to be a bit vulnerable, to ask for help, it does get easier far more quicker than you think.
Jonathan Hoban, always good to see your face. I think we've covered some very useful, very important ground with this chat. We'll leave it there. I shall say that this, and you've also worked very hard on typing something up for every session that we do. We're going to have sort of bullet points on theoutdoorguide.co.uk and also up on your website.
That's right. Yeah, it's all up there for sure.
Just read out your website address for people as well.
It's www.jonathanhoban.com.
There we go. So we've got jonathanhoban.com and we've got the outdoor guide. We hope it's useful. We hope that you can use this and that it's of value to you. And we will be back next week. We're going to make this a regular thing. We'll be back next week with more advice covering other subjects that we think are going to be useful for you. This is the lockdown session. I'm Julia Bradbury. That wonderful man is Jonathan Hoban. We'll see you next time.